Tonight on Mississippi Insight, countdown to the election. Just over a week away, the deadlines you need to know. Also, the challenge facing the new head of Mississippi's Democratic Party. After a washout in the 2019 election, he tells us how he plans to rebuild, starting at the local level.
Now, I know that's a tall order, but I'm going to work at it. That's who I am. It's about achieving against great odds.
And Mike Espy one-on-one. Highlights from my interview with the candidate trying to finish what he started in 2018. Hello and welcome to Mississippi Insight. I'm Byron Brown. Thank you for joining us. With just over a week to go until the election, we are talking with the head of Mississippi's Democratic Party. Judge Tyree Irving has been in the position just since July, taking over a party that's trying to recover from a rout in last year's statewide elections. Chairman Irving joins us via Zoom. We want to talk about the future of the Democratic Party, but the upcoming election is at the forefront of our minds right now. Does your job of rebuilding start next Tuesday?
Well, it starts in earnest next Tuesday, I guess next Wednesday, but I've been trying to do some things ever since I got in the position as chairman of the party on the 25th of July. But you're right, after this election, in terms of the future of the party, it gets, I start in earnest of building the party for victory in the future. And we're going to do that.
The big race is the one for Senate. Mike Espy in a rematch with Cindy Hyde-Smith. Polls have shown this is a close race. Espy's raised more money than Hyde-Smith. Can Mike Espy finish what he tried to do in 2018?
Oh, absolutely he can finish that. I think there's an energy, there's an enthusiasm out there that I wasn't in this position, in 18. So I don't know how, what was the energy level there. But I can tell you this. I have been really encouraged by the calls that I've been getting into the headquarters here. I've had people say to me, Chairman, we may not be able to flip the state for Biden, but I think we might be able to steal this one for Espy. And these, those sort of comments have been coming from primarily white women, but we've also had some white males, people who I would have normally, particularly the white men, that I would have considered a typical Trump voter. I had one elderly white male say to me, he came by, he wanted to get a Biden and Espy sign, and he wanted more than I had available because I didn't have a lot and I was trying to spread them around. So I asked him, I said, you are a good Democrat, aren't you? He said, well, I'm gonna tell you the truth. He says, I'm 75 years old and I have voted Republican all of my life except the last election. And I'm not voting Republican ever again. And he went on to tell me why he was not doing that. And primarily it was because of the Republicans' position on the lack of health care, a failure, unwillingness to expand Medicaid here in Mississippi. And he says, I'm 75 years old and I've never, except for that one time, voted Democrat, but I'm Democrat for the day I die now. And there have been others. And, I know that's anecdotal, but I've had quite a bit of that kind of anecdotal evidence, and the polls that Mike has now shows him neck and neck. Now, I understand that polls are not perfect, but I am absolutely convinced that there is an energy out there. There is there's a feeling that people, even in Mississippi, maybe not to the same level as people in other parts of the country, but here in Mississippi, I think people are tiring with what has been going on at the national level with Donald Trump.
Pollsters are saying that for Espy to win, he'll have to get an Obama-like turnout for black voters, and about 22% of white voters will turn out and support him. Is that possible for Espy to get that kind of a turnout?
Well, I think it is. Certainly, it's, on the black side, I don't think it's any question at all. And I think the message that he's been delivering and carrying straight to white Mississippians, I think it is resonating. I'm like Espy. I don't believe that there is anything that cannot be done. You just got to get the right formula. you got to persevere, and you got to believe in it. And if you do that and work at it, I think you can achieve it. So I think we're going to be pleasantly surprised here in Mississippi on election night with respect to this Senate race. I really do.
Mississippi Today talked about the importance of having Congressman Benny Thompson supporting Mike Espy this time around. Will that make a difference with voters, especially black voters? I'm not suggesting, I wouldn't suggest that people are not, blacks won't vote for Espy unless Congressman Thompson endorses him, but there is no daylight between Congressman Thompson and the rest of black Mississippians on wanting to see Espy elected as our senator. So I think, yeah, every little bit helps with Congressman Thompson's endorsement. It certainly doesn't hurt. I think if there is anybody who's a little bit hesitant in the black community, but who have the respect and trust of Congressman Thompson, then that will help them make up their mind. Let's talk a little bit about what happened last year. The Democrats in 2019 couldn't win any statewide races. What happened then, and what's changed since in the year's time?
Well, I don't know how much has changed, but I can tell you how much is going to change going forward. As I said earlier, I became chairman of the party on the 25th day of July. And soon as we get this November 3rd election behind us, I'm going to be convening pockets of Democrats from across this state and everywhere that I can find a Democrat who's willing to help me here in Mississippi. And we're going to build this party. It's going to be a formidable force, political force in this state. So you take my word for it. When it comes to statewide elections 3 years from now, we're going to win some of those statewide races. We're going to unify. We're going to get the percentage of good, solid white Democrats that I know exist in this state. We're going to maximize the African-American turnout. And we're going to claim victory 3 years from now in some statewide races. In the meantime, before we get there, we have municipal races coming up next year, I believe it is. And one of my goals is to make sure that we have municipal Democratic executive committees in all of these cities where Democrats are elected to mayor and alderman and council positions. We're going to unify Democrats across this state, from the very local level, constable, all the way up to statewide office holders. It's going to be one Mississippi and one Democratic Party, where we all will be on the same page with the same objective, and that is to win elections. Now, I know that's a tall order, but I'm going to work at it. That's who I am. It's about achieving against great odds. You know, I came from a very low and lonely beginning. I grew up on a plantation. And against all odds, I've made my way to where I am now. So I'm a fighter for the good of the people. And I know once we as Democrats horn the message that we need to take to Mississippian, we're going to open some eyes and change some attitudes here in Mississippi. I'm going to be focusing on, I say people under 50 for sure. Now, we're not excluding anybody, but to get that percentage of good, solid white Democrats, voting Democrats because they voting with the Democratic Party because they understand that the Democratic Party's policies benefit them. They got to understand it, and we're going to take the message to them, and I think over time it will bear fruit.
Who are the rising stars in the party as you look ahead to 2023?
Well, I'm not at this point ready to name who I consider maybe rising stars. What I'll tell you this, we will do our homework as a party in selecting and recruiting good individuals who are willing to run with the D behind their name and willing to behave and govern as a Democrat should. We will have a good slate of candidates when that time comes. Just stay tuned. Post this election next month, the Democratic Party is going to be all over the state doing what needs to be done to track the good Democrats. There are a lot of folks out there who will vote Democrat if they just understand what the Democratic Party has been doing. But for too long here in Mississippi, what you've had is politicians feeding information to Mississippians to shape their attitudes and their beliefs about the two dominant political parties, which just has not been the truth. For example, there are counties in Mississippi would be in a lot worse shape than they are right now if we didn't get $3 for every dollar we send to Washington. But how many times have you heard Republican politicians running against Washington and running against that don't want government involved in your personal affairs? Well, I don't know any of them not taking those dollars that Washington is sending back to the state. And as poor as this state is, we would be in bad shape if we did not have those dollars. One other example, for example, the average, and this gets to the point of, trying to keep the races separated. The narrative has been that the Democrats are about giving away, your hard-earned tax dollars to trifling, lazy black folks who are not working. Well, that's just a falsehood. But that's the narrative that they want to put out there to keep poor, middle income, and slightly upper middle income whites and black from coming together. And so we're gonna strip the lies back. Gonna tell the truth. We're gonna explain to people right where they are in their county why they would be better off voting the Democrat, because the Democrats have their backs.
Judge Tyree Irving, I appreciate your time spending with us and explaining what's going on, and we appreciate talking with you. Thank you very much. When we come back, Mike Espy, one-on-one. This past week, I had the chance to talk one-on-one with Mike Espy as he runs for Senate against Cindy Hyde-Smith, a rematch of a 2018 special election runoff. It was the second of my two interviews with the leading candidates for U.S. Senate. I asked Mr. Espy about a number of issues, including the questions about his indictment and eventual acquittal on corruption charges back in the 90s, and how he will avoid getting caught up in the scandal should he win.
It was a terrible time for me. Can I use the word bull crap on Channel 12? A bunch of bull crap, political bull crap that I was caught in. I stood up to the bully. I defended these accusations. I said always that they were untrue and unfair, and I was proven correct. After a 7-week trial, the jury exonerated me completely, and then I went into the jury room, Byron. Some of them were laughing, some of them were crying. And they told me it was the most ridiculous thing they had ever seen, sitting through 7 weeks with 7 witnesses against me that we just decimated. It was bull crap, but most of it, if I had any problem, it was the impression of impropriety. So you have impropriety and then the impression of impropriety. I would just say I accept responsibility for creating incidents that look like the impression of impropriety. So when I go up to the U.S. Senate, I'll abide by the highest ethical standards. If I go to a football game with someone, I'll pay for that ticket. And that was the issue in this case.
COVID-19, once a vaccine is approved and ready for widespread distribution, will you take it?
Of course, yeah. Especially Dr. Fauci says it. I mean, this guy should get every prize that we could ever give in America. He's telling the truth. He said this thing is real. He told us how to ward it off. He told us how to suppress it, and we're just not following his advice. President Trump isn't following it. Senator Hyde isn't following it. Remember, Senator Hyde said it's going to be over in February. She said 2 weeks. So she lied to us. She's not leading us. And I want to just say I'm not a doctor. So as someone who is not a doctor, I'm going to follow the doctor's advice. Dr. Fauci, if he says the vaccine is coming in tomorrow, right? If he said it, and all I have to ask 2 questions. Is it safe? Is it effective? If he tells me yes, I'll take it tomorrow.
Would you support making a COVID-19 vaccine part of the vaccination regimen that all school children must take it before they return to school?
Not mandatory, because I can't tell a parent where to send their child, really. If you want to send your child to public school, private school, parochial school, charter school, that's up to you. You know what's best for your child. And if you don't want your child to take that vaccine, we can't make you. Nobody's gonna come to your house and make your child do anything. But I don't think that child should go to school, because then that would be maybe a risk of infecting everyone else who took the vaccine. So I want to make it available, but not mandatory.
Cases are surging right around the country and here in Mississippi, and the governor has brought back mask mandates in several counties. But should masks be mandated nationwide?
COVID is here. It is not a hoax. It's not something that's going to mysteriously disappear. And until we get a vaccine, the only way we can really protect ourselves is through a mask, Byron. My mask protects you, and your mask protects me. So I wish that there had been a mandate. I really wish so. We can't, I don't know how to enforce it. Certainly I wouldn't have any penalties of those who would overlook it. But it is a signal from the federal government that this thing is serious. The virus is conveyed through airborne particles, and the only way we can stop it is with this tiny facial covering. I know it's inconvenient. Mississippi is hot and it's uncomfortable, but it's the only thing that protects us until we get a vaccine.
Some Democrats believe that the confirmation of Amy Coney Barrett is cause for stacking the Supreme Court or adding more justices should Joe Biden be elected president. Do you support that idea, yes or no?
I do not support court packing. Tell you why. I do not. I've been busy. I've not watched a lot of the Senate judiciary confirmations. I think Judge Barrett, I think soon to be Justice Barrett, seems to me to be brilliant woman. And by all looks of it, she'll be the ninth justice. So I've heard this about court packing going to, if you pack it, you have to make it an odd number and you have to put 2 more in. So if it gets, it's 9 now, some want to go to 11. If the court flips back to correct what the other group did, they want to go to 15 or 17 or 19, and it's got to stop somewhere. So I'm going to say no. I'm not in favor of court packing.
You can see the full interview with Mike Espy, as well as my interview last week with Senator Cindy Hyde-Smith, by going to our website, WJTV.com. When we come back, the surge in absentee voting for the 2020 election and when you need to get your ballot in. Tonight marks 10 days until Election Day. All the races, including the big one for president, are in the home stretch. In Mississippi, that means 1 more week of absentee voting in person. And in Hinds County, they are predicting a record. 12 News' Tao Ta talked to voters.
Even before the pandemic, Mississippi has some of the most restrictive early voting laws in the nation. You are eligible to vote absentee if you are 65 or older, have a disability, or if you're going to be away from your home area on Election Day. Lawrence Allen tells me he's voted every year since he turned 18. For those like him, the process to vote was seamless, but says the current political climate is chaotic.
It's smooth, but it's almost like a circus, what's going on politically.
Hinds County Election Commissioner Tony Johnson says a lot of people are voting absentee this year, which means one less thing to worry about, not having to battle the crowds on Election Day due to COVID-19.
There are several thousand ballots that are still out that have been sent in the mail for absentee. So when those final numbers come in, I'm confident that we'll be well over 10,000 plus for absentee this year.
For Terry Walker, he says it's his first time voting absentee, offering a word of advice. pack your patience.
Just keep going. I just keep going. Just have patience. I have patience in God.
The Secretary of State says there are around 2 million active voters in Mississippi. The deadline to vote absentee in person is Saturday, October 31st at 5 p.m.
That was Tal reporting. All mail-in absentee ballots must be postmarked by Election Day, November 3rd, and must be received within 5 business days of Election Day in order to be counted. We'll be right back. Thanks to Democratic Party Chairman Judge Tyree Irving for joining us. For Tal, I'm Byron Brown. We'll be back again next Saturday night for another edition of Mississippi Insight. Until then, make it a good night.